NewsWhip. We are a new technology that helps support an age-old tradition of storytelling. What we do is we look at billions of digital objects, across the web and social, and interpret them as signals. What's happening? What's trending? How are people reacting to videos? What are the top stories? And we provide all this insights to agencies and communication professionals. For today, we're going to go through a couple of things. We're going to talk about characters, stories, the role that they play on building trust with audiences. We're going to look at social publishing, trends on the platforms. A lot has happened in the last 12 months. We'll dig into that. Also look at new ways of reaching audiences for agencies and for brands. But before we do that, I wanted to have a little fun. We have a big weekend coming up here with the royal wedding. We wanted to look at our audience and ask them the question as far as, whom do you trust more? Trust has a big impact on relationship building. And we posed it out to social, and we were surprised that, J.K. Rowling's, the author of Harry Potter, was winning. She was beating the Queen. And we were kind of dumbfounded by this. So then we said, you know what, let's look at where we're placing this and let's go wider and put it out to Reddit and other channels. The results totally flipped. So it's really about knowing your audience. On the social environment, there was more connection with an author of a children's fantasy book than there was the longest standing monarch of the British Empire. Taking it to the next level, we wanted to say, okay, we have Meghan Markle coming in here. What is the relationship like with audiences that engage with her? Similar trends on social, but then when we brought it out to the wider web, the Queen won 72% to 28%. So it was just really interesting about how people perceive these characters in their lives. So then we looked a little bit deeper about what are the stories that are resonating with these individuals. And this is the last 12 months of looking at total engagements on a monthly basis per each person. What we found was really interesting is the story about JK and how she really became the individual she was for the last 20 years is still resonating with audiences. It's a very powerful story. It's one that's very relatable for folks. And for Meghan, it was really about this kind of inspiration, this love story that people connected to. And for the Queen, it was a lot about social issues. But what's interesting, because Meghan is now this social presence, she's in yellow there, and you could see that spike. So she's active, involved in conversations. When she is, a lot of people engage with her. To take it a little step further, these are a lot of the top stories that connected, with the author here in the last 12 months. A lot of it has to do with nostalgia, right? That emotional feeling that you connect, with her as an author and the experiences that you've had, reading the novels. With the Queen, it's about social issues. Her being supportive of the LGBT. Also, sometimes when she has a couple cocktails, those stories do pretty well as well. And with Meghan, it was really about being this relatable Duchess to be. It was really interesting to see, how a younger audience connects with her and has that relatable experience, as far as any kind of, racial diversity. Okay, so looking at these stories, these characters, these individuals, and how they're impacting audiences and relationships, we wanted to really kind of take a look at content in general. And that previous presentation was a great example because there's so much that's out there. So how do these stories break through? How do you have an impact for yourself as well as for your clients? And this came from Facebook, right? The average person scrolls through 300 feet a day. That's amazing, right? So how do these stories break through? So that's what we do, is we focus on the DNA of storytelling and really trying to demystify what's happening. And this is just a look back at April, comparing the UK and the US, the top stories that are out there. In the UK, it was hard news. It was about loss. In the US, I'm sad to say, it was basically a quiz that led to some type of, we'll go to the next one. So in comparison and a little bit deeper, there really is a lot of interesting about consumption. In the UK, it's about hard news. In the US, not so as much. And a lot of the focus on the top stories here were about global issues. In the US, they were about US issues. But there's a lot of continuity as far as what were those feelings that impacted stories. And these are some of the bigger emotions that were triggered in the top stories in the last 12 months. loss, community, curiosity. A lot of today's brand publishers focus on these in order to drive engagement with audiences. They won't publish a story unless it triggers one or two of these emotions. So let's take some examples. Georgia woman is caught on camera assaulting a pregnant black soldier, right? Outrage. Here's another example of loss. Sesame Street is now the world's first autism-certified theme park. And that's a feel-good story, and it also has that nostalgic feeling by being that kind of childhood experience with Sesame Street. So looking across platforms, right? Everyone consumes content on platforms, and each platform is unique and different. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. And we all know that Facebook made some significant changes to its algorithm, was going to provide more preference to the personal stories and quality storytelling. We wanted to look at the impact of the publishing community here within the UK and that had on their audiences. And there was a lot of negative responses from some of the viral publishers after the algorithm change. But if you look here, it stayed the same. If anything, there were some spikes from some of the leading publishers. Deeper into web content trends, right? We're looking at content that people consume and they want to share it to social. A lot of the top stories in the market here were simply about this kind of connectivity to loss, this feeling of public grieving, when tragic events happen, as well as there is this kind of sense to report. People want to read and they want to push it out right away. They look at the headline and they want to push, especially when it touches a lot of these elements. Native Facebook posts. What's really interesting here, a lot of the trends are about, hey, that would definitely be me. Like that would me be doing something as silly as this. And this was a bowling video gone wrong. It already had 133 million views. It's crazy, and this was really a tribal instinct. You wanted to be able, you can connect with it. You could see yourselves or your friends doing that. The Instagram and the rise of influencers and celebrities is pretty powerful. So we're seeing a lot more brands connecting with, not only the Kardashians that are out there, but these emerging Instagram followers that have kind of deep roots with the community. And a lot of the most popular ones are those that have a stance around social issues. Here's an example of Emma Watson talking about race, and she's promoting these causes also within, alongside her everyday lives on Instagram. Think differently about the platforms, right? So we're talking a lot about Facebook, Instagram. Pinterest is really interesting. We're seeing a lot of opportunities for marketers and for brands and for communicators to leverage Pinterest in a different way. It's not just recipes. Here's an example of the Daily Mail, looking at the last year. Their growth of engagements, it's gone 3, 4, or 5x over the course of the last few months. That's when they really started covering the royals, both visually as well as providing some editorial here. So there's opportunities outside of just the Facebook and Instagram, looking at Snap, looking at other dark social. Here's another thing I wanted to share with you as far as understanding what works and how audience engage with content. Delish is obviously a recipe site. Look at their headlines in 2017 in April and look at them now. The story is the headline. Okay, new ways to reach your audiences. Emojis, right? Emojis, this kind of hieroglyphic in the social world. The growth of the last few years has been tremendous. So this is a visual way of telling a story, looking at the top 100 shared posts of March 2016, 2017, 2018. And by the way, the one at the top that's a crying, that's actually a happy emoji. Tears mean happiness. So anyway, so also looking at, okay, emojis. Some of my clients probably aren't going to be putting emojis, on their headlines of their campaigns. Well, you'd be surprised here, looking at some of these top publishers in the UK and their usage of emojis in telling that story. Look at the Financial Times and Instagram, right? Almost 9 of their top 10 stories during this period had an emoji in there. Sky Sports, really interesting the way they're doing it versus Sky News. And then there's folks, the Telegraph, Economist, and The Guardian have yet to go down that path. Let's go a little bit more about the Financial Times. Thinking about your audience and the platform is really important. And for them, their content strategy on Facebook is focused really around, tech and Bitcoin and Amazon's impact, to the grocery community as well as workplace innovations. Whereas on Instagram, they're taking this National Geographic approach, and it's working for audiences. Going back to finding influencers, what we're seeing is a lot of trends, not just within retail and kind of entertainment and lifestyle, but with banks and healthcare and various highly regulated institutions are starting to partner with influencers that they can connect with. Personal finance influencers giving advice on savings and college tips. Here's an example of two health-based influencers on the benefits of mental health on exercise, as well as young moms. And if you notice, they have millions of followers. And every time they post something, they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of engagements per post. So this is an opportunity for your clients to identify who's influential in their sector and start to build relationships with them. So I wanted to share a couple of interesting stories that we saw. And here's Boohoo. I wasn't as familiar with them. I know they're kind of a local retailer. They target Gen Z, right? They sell clothes to Gen Z. That's their community. What we're seeing with Gen Z is these are digital-first consumers. They grew up sharing, right? They grew up, saying who their friends are, what they like, where they go, what they purchase. Their community is open. So their relationships they're having with brands is distinctly different than the one I had growing up and seeing an ad and kind of responding. The Boohoo realized this and they launched The Fix. And The Fix is a destination that's going to talk about, Prosecco donuts and cool places to go and travel and experiences to have. So they're providing value to their to the consumers who are purchasing stuff for them, but they're extending the relationship. It's really smart. They've doubled their revenues in the last 12 months too. So we're learning a lot from these guys. Here's another Missguided, another clothing line. If you look on the left, they had someone tweet them directly and say, hey, I wish you had a jeans and a nice top section on your website. Jeans and a nice top. And they said, got it, noted, and they actually built one. And they publicized this and they got a lot of good press for it. So I think this is an example of really listening to your audience, participating, and making them feel connected to you as a brand. Here's another kind of tongue-in-cheek examples that we're seeing for some beverage companies. On the left, the sun is hot. How's that tan coming along, fellow gingers? Right, and then they have a ginger tan index. I mean, this is fun stuff. And then you look at Innocent. Don't forget to eat your clocks forward before bedtime tonight. Here's how. And they're going through some kind of infographics to explain that. And then here, Yorkshire Tea is having some fun with different colors of teas and different names. This is not meant to sell products. This is really meant to build an audience. And these types of brands are taking a stance, and they're testing this on social, testing it on Instagram, testing it on Facebook, and getting really good responses. Look at those engagements, 20,000, 5,000, 4,800. You don't have to be a super cool brand or innovative or selling to Gen Z to participate. So we wanted to look at the aviation industry, and here we saw Thomas Cook. I think they have 33 planes, based out of Manchester. Their audience are aviation enthusiasts. You look at their Instagram account, it's pictures of planes, just pictures of planes. And you look at something like British Airways, and it's more about the inspiration, the destination, the experience you're going to have participating with BA. Both are successful. But Thomas Cook knows who they are, knows what their kind of limitations are even to produce something like this, and they're focusing on their audience. The rise of socially conscious brands. The last few years has been transformational, I think, for brands and being connected to social issues. And we're seeing, a lot of brands are forced to participate. Some want to do it, some it's not natural for them. There's a lot of change. And we're seeing more and more brands connect with what their audience is and go deeper in building relationship. And here's Burberry. I mean, they came out and supported an LGBTQ charity, and they publicized this. And this is an example of, the engagements on Instagram. I mean, dramatic improvements. So I think we're seeing a lot of transformations here with brands really participating and understand what their audiences care about. Takeaways. So storytelling. The role of storytelling in content marketing and publishing on brand building is significant. But understanding that emotional connection and the role your content plays is really important. Having that forethought before going and building a campaign on the key triggers that you want to hit. Platform trends change all the time. We see that. That's what we do. We live in the data every day, monitoring all these trends for our clients. You need to be aware of them. You need to understand the impacts they have. New platforms come in. We're going to see a lot of transformations in the next 6 months of dark social and the impact they have on branded content. Learn from others. This is a big thing. Understand what people are doing, what's successful. You don't have to be the first, but you could do it better and get some tips from someone like the Financial Times on Instagram. Get involved. Have your clients get involved in the community, get closer to who their clients are, build relationships, respond with them, communicate with them. Have fun. Right? There's a lot of things on social happen so fast. You have an opportunity here of testing and getting closer to them. And then lastly, it really is, I think it's important now as you're supporting brands to understand what they care about and participate. Thank you very much.